Hello and welcome to the SamMobile Podcast. I am your host, Ben from SamMobile, and this is your show that pretty much brings you all the latest news in the world of Samsung daily, weekly, fresh off the press. And this is all brought to you by SamMobile.com. And this is episode number 3. And boy, we're going to get into it. We're going to be pretty much discussing Samsung Display and their breakthrough in display tech with QD-OLED, or as pretty much they like to call it, QD display, as the correction likes to come, and how that is pretty much shaping up the rest of 2022 in the display industry and beyond. We're also going to be talking about, we have pretty much got some exclusives coming in where our sources are pretty much telling us that we could be seeing One UI 5 based on Android 13 much earlier than expected in a public beta release, even before the upcoming Fold 4 and Flip 4. And on top of that, we do have a special guest in where we're going to be discussing all things related to Samsung. He's a Samsung fan as well into it as well. I won't introduce him. I will allow him to introduce himself. And I'll pass it over to him. He's a dear colleague. He's a dear friend, actually. Being in the industry as kind of semi-long as we've been in. He was one of the first people that I pretty much, touch base with. And it's great to have him in person, people. Another in-person guest already in episode 3. I won't take much more time. I will pass it over to him to introduce himself.
Hello, I am George. I am from the YouTube channel Snappy Tech. And yeah, we've known each other for so long at this point that the fact that it's been this long since I last saw you just feels wrong. If you'd told me that it was possible to go 3 years without seeing you in person,
mate,
I wouldn't have believed it.
Mate.
But thank you for having me on. It's always great catching up with you.
Mate, honestly, I always say time is the most valuable thing. You taking your time out to just help, even just all the technical behind the scenes stuff. It's been more fun than I actually expected, but having you in person, just the time taken out, man. Yeah. I appreciate that the most. And I always say it, man, in-person podcasts and discussions in general hit different to virtually.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
It's really, really good to have you in because I know that you share like a like-minded, approach to Samsung. And obviously, SamMobile, we are all things related to Samsung.
Yeah.
And we're really just going to be discussing it and just getting your thoughts in to chime in is definitely going to make it more fun. So really, really appreciate you coming here. So as that being said, as intros go, right, we have an in-person guest. Get your popcorn, get your drink, get your meal, sit back and relax. And we'll be right back after this. And we are going to get straight into the nitty gritty. So Samsung Display. We're going to be talking about Samsung Display and just the breakthrough, the genuine breakthrough that they've had when it comes to display tech with QD-OLED, Quantum.OLED, or, by correction, they prefer to call it QD display, but it's really QD-OLED. Is Samsung finally going large format with OLED, but in their style?
I think they are. I think for difficulty with QD-OLED is we've entered this situation where naming schemes are just ridiculous.
Oh, mate, for marketing reasons as well.
Yeah, so before they had OLED, they had QLED, which wasn't OLED.
Yeah.
But if you're like a normal person that isn't in the tech space, you don't see the difference between OLED and QLED being that different.
You just see LED.
Yeah, exactly. You see that and you just, how big can a difference between the O and the Q be?
Yeah.
Right? It's like
I didn't actually think of it that way.
from physically looking at it, like an A and an O and a Q are basically the same letter.
Yeah.
But B also, you might have uses for bringing this back to Samsung, is it the difference between the S22 and the A?
Yeah.
It could be an OLED just at a slightly lower tier.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And so I can imagine the ridiculous amount of confusion that brought to people buying TVs.
Yeah.
And hopefully the new QD-OLED displays puts that all to bed.
Yeah. It's interesting you say that because Samsung, when my first instance with it was at CES, and just to clarify, people don't realize this, and again, I kind of had to get educated in it, that Samsung Display and Samsung Electronics are two separate divisions. You know, Samsung Display do supply displays to other OEMs that meet their requirements in terms of, you know, spec, you know, breakdown, calibration, and also the mass order that they want. I.e., a well-known fruit company is very, you know, well accompanied with Samsung Display in terms of quantity and quality of the panels that they're supplied for their certain iPhone. And we're talking about the human eye, by the way. Code wink wink.
And the thing with that specifically is what happens in that case is the company goes away and designs what their panel should look like. Yeah. So the company goes, this is the screen we want you to make. And Samsung just builds it. They don't do the design process. Yeah. You know, the Samsung phones use pentile OLEDs. Yeah. The other phones don't. Yeah. You know, because the other companies go, hey, Samsung, go make this. Yeah. And Samsung just goes away and makes it. They don't give any feedback. Yeah. I think you can pay more if you want the feedback from Samsung's design team, but they don't provide it as standard. And
it's true because if you think about things like display calibration, that also works with software. Yeah. You know, and what's supported. You know, like if you even just slight tangent, you go to TVs, for example, some TVs support up to HDR10 plus, but some support Dolby Vision. Yeah. The pipeline is completely different in terms of how HDR is represented and what content is supported on what platform, you know. So you're not wrong in saying that in terms of hardware level build based on if they've got the actual, you know, fabrication process to build it to what the OEM wants to calibrate and spec their support to, which is really good to see. And it's I think it will solve that. The reason why I think it will solve that is this: controlled environment or not, what I saw of QD display, as they were calling it, or QD-OLED, was impressive. Yeah. They showed it in 3 instances. 2 main instances from my memory. And we did a video for our audio listeners and also video listeners. We did do a QD display, QD-OLED video explained on the SamMobile TV YouTube channel. So definitely links in the description below. Check it out. Very brief, but in that controlled environment, from what I saw, was impressive. From TVs compared to your traditional OLED TV panels, as well as obviously what we're seeing in monitors, which we're seeing companies like Alienware now bringing out their ultra wide 34-inch monitors, 21:9 aspect ratios with these, and especially in HDR environments, they are actually achieving true HDR 1000 nits peak brightness in HDR. Crazy, right? It is early adopter technology, right? In terms of shortcomings are not necessarily shortcomings in the sense of deal breakers, but for TVs, there isn't any 8K models. Yeah. They haven't figured out how to make 8K panels of them. That's where obviously their QLED TVs really work. Their current ones that we covered at CES, the 800 MB, their 900 MB. Manufacturing is still quite tricky, you know, especially within this pandemic and epidemic kind of stage that we're in and whatnot. And it is a new technology. You're going to pay a little bit of a premium for it in that sense, right? But having the best of both worlds, that quantum dot layer, that blue layer that allows that maximum brightness, that consistent brightness with better viewing angles from what I saw, as well as the main one that trips a lot of people, because Samsung Electronics now have their new TV using the QD-OLED, QD display panel. Yeah. But Sony, I believe, had that with the A95K. And I've seen a couple of reviews online with it where it tripped up a lot of people, where I think the peak and the sustained brightness wasn't higher than what they expected. It was still 1000, but the perceived brightness was higher. But one of the things that was actually corrected and really improved was the color accuracy and the pure brightness for each color range, i.e. the red, green, and blue, especially red. I was playing Spider-Man Miles Morales on one of their controlled environment TVs and on the PS5. On, like, the reds looked not just accurate red, but it was bright. It was, you know, and that's one of the things that they touched on, you know, that each individual color, the brightness luminosities just improve so much on top of the uniform brightness and the HDR performance, and obviously the combat of burning as well. So it's a game changer.
Absolutely.
So far, I hate using that term. I do hate using that term sometimes. But in my opinion, from what I saw in the controlled environment in January to what we're seeing in the early reviews of certain, ultra wide computer monitors that are being used right now, to the TVs that are being showcased right now from Sony and Samsung Electronics now, really, really good. Really, really good.
And I think a key point you made is something that people don't realize is the importance of not only sort of color accuracy, but color accuracy through brightness ranges.
Yep.
Almost all SDR content is actually edited at like 150 nits.
Mm-hmm.
It's done in effectively a pitch black room.
Yeah, that's true.
I
just found that out recently.
Yeah.
Funny enough.
Because that's how you get the most color. Because the more white you introduce, the more it can skew the other colors.
Yeah.
So if Samsung are using these QD displays and getting ridiculous color accuracy throughout the range, that makes a big difference. Because, when I watch TV at home, sometimes it's the daytime and there's light coming in through the window. And you crank the brightness of it. And sometimes it's nighttime. So you turn it, it's something that unless you're someone like you and me, where we kind of look at it and go, wait a minute, something's off.
You don't
realize how much better it is until you've experienced it.
Dude, that kid you not. That was the very thing I noticed. I noticed that. And I yes, in that environment, it's cherry picked. It's an exhibition kind of place. And to be honest, Samsung in general, from display and electronics, they were the dominant force of CES, right? They really carried CES. But I was still impressed, and the biggest showcase of that was playing a game like Miles Morales on the PS5 in, with the full ray tracing, full HDR10 support on. It looked like, I noticed it. I noticed it instantly, and I thought, this is amazing. If this is even 95% of what I'm seeing, this is definitely a game changer. Because one of the things that obviously I noticed as well that really stood out to me well was the shadow detail, the lack of crush in the shadow details for blacks. Because obviously it still has the OLED characteristics where it can pretty much have infinite contrast ratio because of the deep blacks. And when comparing it to the normal traditional WOLEDs that you're seeing, again, processing has a lot to do with it. The processing chip that has a lot to do with it in terms of how it optimizes it for. But I think this is what we've needed for Samsung, because in terms of, their active matrix organic light emitting diodes, their AMOLED displays on their smartphones, they've mastered it. Like up to 1,750 nits of brightness on these S22 Ultras. Yeah. Amongst, the vision booster that they've got to really, they've clocked it. But we've always wanted them to go large format. Yeah, right. Absolutely. We've always wanted them to go large format. I mean, and for us that we understand some form of how display technology works, we know why they didn't. They went for local dimming instead. They're working on micro LED, which is still a very expensive tech. Saw it at CES, looked amazing, large scale. Mini LEDs coming into its own. Local dimming still has its place with the traditional LCD panels, yes, but this is what we've been waiting for, in my opinion. And as someone that loves displays and display tech in general, please, QD display, QD OLED, all the things. I'm ready.
Yeah. Ready to go.
Ready.
It's incredible seeing that progress. Yeah. Because we have a Samsung and an LG TV at home.
Yeah.
And what was really interesting is the Samsung TV is older and it's 1080p and it's current. Basically, we kind of cycle for our TVs where we like buy a new TV and then the old TV ends up in the kitchen for when we're doing recipes or playing music in the kitchen. And my dad would swear that the Samsung TV, even though it's only 1080p versus the 4K HDR of the LG, he would swear that something about the Samsung just looks better.
Just pops, yeah.
And he was like, And I'd asked him about it. He was like, I can't put my finger on it, but there's just something about it where I can't help but feel like it looks better.
Yeah.
And so with Samsung catching up on the technology front, because LG has had OLED TVs for a while.
Oh yeah, they took the bet.
Gorgeous.
They took the bet. They took the bet and really pushed through. Yeah.
And I think that up until now, LG has been the place to go for for just image quality.
Hey, look, it's the truth based on this, right? For example, their partnerships as well, right? Things like Dolby Vision support for HDR. Their TVs actually support, not just VRR, but NVIDIA G-Sync and AMD's FreeSync. And on top of that, they go as far as making sure that with the HDMI 2.1 spec, you get the full 48 gigabits per second on all 4 ports, including the one that has eARC support for your audio output, right? So it's not just that alone. There's a complete experience that they really went after well, right? And this is where I think this is kind of like an Empire Strikes Back moment. Pun the Star Wars. Like I got always find a way to bring Star Wars into anything I talk about, my pop culture nerdness. So this is probably an Empire Strikes Back moment for them. Yeah. Where they can really claw a lot of that market back. New generation gamers that have the PS5, that have the Xbox Series X, Series S, the RTX based graphics, the 6000 series graphics from Radeon with RX, that all have that HDMI 2.1 spec, full 4K 120 with the whole color space, whether it's using display stream compression or not, full bandwidth, whatever it is. That market is very important because that was my decision making for not going Samsung for TV, right? The lack of HDMI 2.1 ports, enough of them, So this is a very, very promising place to be for QD-OLED, QD display in general. And I think now that we are in the second quarter of the year and, we've seen companies that are jumping on that display tech, Sony with the A95K, if I believe. I will correct me if it's wrong, but I believe that is the A95K that has the QD-OLED display panel for their TVs. And then obviously Alienwave, their ultra wide 34-inch that has that as well. And then Samsung themselves announcing it with, I think it's their S95, but I can't remember what the model is that uses that. It is definitely going to change the game and shape how the display industry looks like year on year. Now, the only thing to really consider, like I said, is price, the lack of 8K, whether that matters or not. I don't know.
I get it. If you really want an 8K TV, you really want an 8K TV. But I think that Samsung has jumped in. There's no denying that they're slightly late to this game, right? Yeah. LG has had OLED TVs for years now. However, Samsung has jumped in just as the GPU shortage is starting to ease. Yeah. It's getting easier to buy Xboxes and PlayStations. Yeah. And what that means is that this is the time where people are maybe buying a PlayStation 5, using it on their current TV and going, this is great, but what if it was even better?
Ding, ding, ding. That was me.
Yeah.
That was literally me.
And so I think with Samsung have kind of jumped in at just the right time because this is when people will be looking to make those upgrades.
Yeah. That's agreed. And it's so funny you said that because I still feel lucky that I was able to snag the PS5 and the Xbox Series X literally before it. Talk about the modern day Christmas miracle. They came on Christmas Eve. That's our version of, forget Home Alone. This is my version of the Christmas miracle, right? So, and the first thing, once I got it, I was like, I don't have the right display to take advantage of these. I just instantly knew, just because, developers that had actually put that effort in, even a year on, I like to use this one as an example. Insomniac with Ratchet and Clank, you've got full ray tracing support in performance mode and at 120 frames a second with some form of resolution scaling, dynamic resolution scaling, as they call it, DRS. It looks amazing. When I got the OLED with the 4K 120 support, HDMI 2.1, gaming of, it looked absolutely amazing. And you just know that the determining factor of the right display to a generational leap in new devices, it makes it makes a whole difference enjoying it. Whole difference enjoying it, right? So I think you're right when you're saying that timing is now. And if they execute this right, yeah, it can be a good battle and a good paradigm shift.
Yeah.
In the focus of, hey, this might be the right way to go for display tech, you know? And I think what it does is it bridges the gap of, they have been the kings of the small form factor display, especially on smartphones, right? It's now time to actually benefit. And I actually think, a part of me thinks, and I might be cynical and senile here, but a part of me thinks that if you look at the Tab S8 range, I'm going a bit on a tangent. Tab S8 is TFT LCD, Tab S8 Plus is Super AMOLED, and then Ultra is Super AMOLED. Those Super AMOLED panels don't have the same over 1000 nits brightness. They're still around 400, you know, with SDR and HDR. I think HDR might go up to about 500-600 with HDR10 Plus. Right, it's a far cry from the 1,750 nits that you get on a smartphone, and this is something that we discussed when we were at MWC, when we were looking at the Galaxy Book 2 and the Book 2 Pro 360 and the Book 2 Pro. That there is just that drop with the Super AMOLED panels at that above 12 inches that don't get the same kind of level of sustained and peak brightness that you get on smartphones. I just have a feeling that maybe QD display and QD OLED might come down to that form factor. What do you think?
I think that's the right place to put it. I think Apple have made this gamble with the micro LED in their with a mini LED in their
12.9 inch iPads. Yeah. So you see, it's that 12 inch form factor and above.
It's that issue where if you're for the uninitiated, the way that making screens works is you basically make what is effectively one massive screen.
Yes.
You make a mother glass and then you slice that into the screens you want.
Glass.
What a
it sounds so epic. It's a mother glass.
Give me one of your finest mother glasses. So you make one mother glass and then you slice it into the screens you want. And so the reason that making smartphone screens that are brighter is easier is because you're making this one mother glass and you're slicing it into smaller bits.
Yes.
So if you have a bit that has a problem, you're losing less screens. If you're making 100 screens out of one piece of mother glass and you lose one, that doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
But if you're making 6 TVs and you lose one, that's a much larger impact.
Yeah.
And so if their yield is increased with these QD-OLED displays, then we might see it come down into smaller form factor displays with the big form factor tech.
Man, I honestly, I think it's something that just came to my mind on the fly while I was thinking it is something to do with that 11, 12 inch form factor and above, where they just haven't been able to get that peak and sustained brightness looking as juicy and crisp with great outdoor visibility and just pure HDR goodness, right? I just think this is where they could shape it. And if they get that manufacturing done in terms of correctly for efficiency, reduced loss, you know, that's what also gets me excited. And getting me excited in that sense comes down to things like laptop screens, laptop displays, because the benefit you're getting is just the lack of ghosting because of the pixel response time, the gray to gray being a lot more efficient and a lot better when it comes to OLED. Instantaneous, genuine 1 millisecond without any overshoot or any overdrive modes.
And the other thing is, the bigger thing for laptops isn't just the fact that they get brighter. Maybe you don't want it to get brighter, and instead you have better battery life.
Yes.
Because QD displays don't need as much power for the same level of brightness. So you get a QD OLED and it's still 500 nits, you know, whatever, but you get much better battery life out of it. And for a laptop, that matters. You know, for a TV, it could almost draw as much power as it wants. Like, if we're being completely honest you know, you don't really care that much, but like a couple of watts difference in a laptop is massive.
Huge difference. It makes a huge difference because this is one of the things we always say for laptops, as complete of an unplugged experience that you can get for a sustained period of time is what makes it a truly mobile product. And I always make this argument that how would you feel if your smartphone, for you to get the maximum performance, you had to plug it in? It's not a smartphone anymore, it's a landline. right? And this is the problem with laptops in general, where power to efficiency ratio, it really needs to be nailed right. And any component completion that can get it closer to, you can use it on battery for a long period of time and get maximum performance while still getting all the juicy benefits of, you know, the best display tech or whatever, brightness and stuff. If QD display and QD OLED can help with that, whew, I'm excited.
Yeah, because the display is the second largest power draw.
Yeah.
On a laptop.
Yeah.
If you're sort of really hitting the CPU, GPU, then it's the display is the number two thing.
Yeah, that's true.
So that makes a major difference.
Huge difference. And in general, I have to say the direction of what QD OLED and QD display has done, it's almost the saying of, you know, better late than never. Yeah. Never late is better. But I'm glad it's here. I'm glad to see the development of it. You know, I want to see it in more computer monitor form factors that support HDMI 2.1 and above with the full spec, you know, 27-inch, 32-inch, you know. With TVs, 100%. Like, the big screen TV experience when you're gaming is phenomenal, can't be beaten. But it's the intermediary, those tablet displays within that 11 to 14-inch form factor and above, laptop displays that are benefiting from, you know, Super AMOLED. But for example, like the Book 2 Pro 360, lovely AMOLED displays, 60 hertz, kind of semi-low brightness. You see, that's where the fix can be, you know. And
there's a really weird reason that I think that they'll go down this route, and it's actually their desktop monitors. The reason I say that is because Samsung has finally gotten into the thing of like, wait a minute, people use desktop monitors like TVs sometimes.
Yeah.
So you can, if you get a sort of a slightly more high-end Samsung monitor, you can get them with like TV remote controls. And they have smart home stuff built in. So you can do like Netflix straight on the display without and the fact they're bringing that down to smaller sizes and making these smart monitors, to me screams, we're trying to shrink this tech
down.
Down.
Yeah. And we can't wait. And honestly, when it comes to display tech, big fans, love what Samsung Display are doing. And let's see what the rest of 2022 and beyond are. And I'm taking this as a last guess to pretty much round up, you know, the first topic and discussion. CES 2023 is going to be very, very exciting to see the development of it in terms of, you know, the uptake, the acquisition, the development. Cannot wait to see more of QD display, QD OLED. Big well done to Samsung Display for getting it done, starting it off. And let's hope to see it really come into fruition and just bring that competition that we want and just that expansion. So yeah, that is pretty much first topic one discussion out of the way, and that is on Samsung Display. Don't go anywhere too far. We're just gonna have a short water break, a little quick snack break, maybe a little pizza break, and then we will pretty much be right back and discussing more on what could potentially be One UI 5 coming a bit early. And we are back. Hope you didn't go too far. And we're really going to be talking about next, which is all the sauces that we have. And I'm not talking about the sauces that you put in your food, you know, hot sauces, hot off the press, has come in and pretty much said that we could be getting One UI 5 based on Android 13 as early as July. Now, this is the public beta. And again, take it with a pinch of salt or grain of salt, whichever size of salt that you want. Things could always change when it comes to timeframes, release dates, when it comes to beta software releases for public in general and whatnot. But this is very, very interesting. And I'm gonna drop some timelines in terms of why that is interesting, because I've had, let me just say friendly, I've had the pleasure of dissecting each One UI update that's come on multiple devices, from beta to public OTA and stuff. And near enough, obviously, that's been the home of SamMobile, the common SamMobile TV. And the first instance of the One UI 4 public beta was, if I remember right, back in September the 14th. And we went through different iterations. I think we went to beta 1, 2, 3, 4. But the final OTA over the air update was actually on the 16th of November. So it's about a 2-month gap. And those original beta program releases were actually on the Galaxy S21 series. I believe the Note 20 series, the Note 20 and Note 20 Ultra had it. And obviously that was registered through Samsung members and is region-based, based on what region was actually supported with it and whatnot. On top of that, just where Samsung are going right now when it comes to being the definitive and de facto version of Android. And obviously here's why. Biggest surprise was at the end of the Unpacked for S22 series and Tab series that they announced 4 years or 4 versions of OS upgrades for Android with 5 years of security. Mind blown. Because we've only ever known 2-3 years. 3 at best if you're lucky. But 4, you're getting closer to the half decade of OS version updates, meaning the current phones are going to be good if all things go well up to Android 16. And this was also previous flagships that were going to get the extension as well. And this was also something that they brought to their mid-range phones, like the A53 and the A33 that just recently got announced, that they will also be getting, you know, the 4 years of OS version updates and security as well. If we look at the timelines, especially with this apparent release of public beta for One UI 5 Android 13, if it's in July, that's going to be a month or so earlier than the Flip 4 and the Fold 4 that we're expecting. Why? Because the Flip 3 and the Fold 4, that was announced back in August 2021. So calendar year difference. We're expecting it somewhere around August if we don't face any production issues. Touch wood, please. Because I love the Fold too much, right? I'm well into foldables to have that kind of delay. If that's the case, then Samsung really, I think they really just want to put their authority down and make themselves that de facto and definitive version of the Android experience, you know. And I mean, we've got One UI 4.1 as the latest one. We should be getting One UI 4.1.1, which should be exclusive for the foldable form factor. What that will look like, we don't know until then. But to get a public version of One UI 5 in a developer build this early, less than a year after, wow. I don't know about you, man, but you got to let me know what you think. I'm thoroughly impressed, generally.
Yeah, I would argue that Samsung has been a de facto Android manufacturer for years now, and they just haven't taken the responsibility. Yeah. You know, if you go to a person in the street and go, do you want an iPhone or an Android phone? They have no idea what you're on about. Yeah. And if you go, do you want an iPhone or a Samsung? People immediately get that. They understand it. They get it. And so I think Samsung has only just come around to like, wait a minute, we're already the de facto experience. Yeah. And we need to make that premium. Yeah. The life cycle of phones, you know, the performance of these phones have not completely plateaued, but they are plateauing to an extent. Yeah, to an extent. There's only so many like FPS you need in Rocket League Sideswipe or whatever game you know. Side note, Rocket League Sideswipe, surprisingly good game. Like, I got it expecting it to be fine, and it's extremely addictive.
Love this. Love this.
My point is, like, the way that 95% of people buy a phone and then use it to scroll through Facebook.
Yes.
And for those people, they don't care if they use an S22 Ultra or an S20. Yeah, you know, true. They're 90% the same.
Same, yeah.
And so Samsung have realized this, and they've realized that sort of the life cycle of phones is also extending. Mm-hmm. And by delivering 4 years of OS updates, they're ahead of everyone else. Google only offers free. And the concept of like stock Android is dead. So it doesn't exist anymore.
Does not exist.
There is a Pixel OS. And it's not stock Android.
It's not stock. It's not stock.
That's fine, but it's not stock.
It's not stock.
And so Samsung, by providing 4 years of OS, makes it 1 more year than Google, and basically 2 years more than anyone else.
Yes.
Most other manufacturers do 2 years of OS. And by having 5 years of security, that's the same as Google. Google also offers 5 years of security and is still 1 or 2 more than most other manufacturers.
Definitely. And it's another thing to touch on to this, right? It creates, to me, this is what is going to create confidence and that perception of long-term reliability. I always say this, yes, how long your phone lasts is also down to how you look after it, 100%, right? Definitely 100%. But the perception of, potentially needing a battery replacement in about 3-4 years, depending on how you charge it, booking a service for that to happen, because gone are the days of the Note 4 where we could just pop out the battery and put in a fresh one. I do miss those days, but we've moved on. Tangent. It's something that will give the image of perception and reliability. And we know the fruit-based company that does it so well that keeps people locked in, right? What you got to remember is these developer conferences that they actually announce when it comes to software features and whatnot. If your older device has that capability and it won't limit, let's just say, a new hardware that needs that software, that's going to tie you in even longer, right? So you may not upgrade to a new phone, but you might get a certain device that works with that particular software that you're on because of the new, encryptions or security or building blocks around that software and how it can communicate. It could be using an ultra wideband chip. We don't know. But that's going to help keep people locked in to Samsung devices, their open ecosystem, as they call it, for a longer period of time, meaning that there's just that mindset of perceived reliability with them as well.
Yeah, and I think the best example of this from Samsung's point of view is every single time they announce a new phone, they talk about the cameras.
There we go.
And about how every single phone has an incredible camera feature, whether it be direct to view or one take. Is it called one take? Single take? Single take.
Yeah, single take.
Yeah, this is all stuff that is completely software based.
Yes.
And so bringing that back to older phones, when I got single take on my Note 10 Plus 5G, I was like, oh my God, it's a new feature. I can, it feels like doesn't feel like a new device again, but it's one of those things.
New life into it a bit.
It breathes honestly, I used single take maybe twice and then decided it wasn't for me.
Yeah.
But for people who did use it, that was a major step forward.
Absolutely.
And with Android 12, it was a visual thing. It's a big visual refresh.
Yeah.
And Android have done their best to kind of separate core OS updates with the rest.
Yeah. They have.
It's things like, even if we want to talk about the pandemic, like COVID, all the COVID stuff was bundled with Google Play services, which is effectively like updating an app.
Yeah.
So, Google Play services got updated and it got COVID tracking, whereas iOS needed a proper update.
Proper update. It did.
And they've just brought it in with emoji.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if you've noticed this, but the current version of One UI has the completely brand new emoji. Because Android now supports updating fonts like you would an app.
Yeah.
So you get the font update and you get the new emoji without needing the newest version of One UI.
Yeah.
And so we're moving towards a space where these sort of OS updates are sort of less and less important on the Android front.
Yeah.
But it's still good to have from a security point of view, from a consistency point of view.
Honestly, it is that, what you said, the security point of view.
And it's the features that you can't, like the camera, features like single take can't be an update. And so for things like that, you need those consistent upgrades.
And people will be thinking, why is that important? Listen, think about stuff like banking apps. There's a reason why banking apps don't work on rooted devices. There's a reason why banking apps, the versions that they're on, don't work on legacy software, right? The building blocks are not there for security wise. So when people always say, oh, but security is that important? Having your money secure is important. If there isn't good building blocks in there and there can be vulnerabilities that can access it in some way, you do not want that. So that is having that half a decade of security security updates, especially for how meticulously on point Samsung have been with doing it monthly. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
And the other thing is Samsung actually takes the security one step further with their hardware-based security using Knox.
Yes.
And so you can basically Knox is a hardware fuse on the chip, and when you flash a ROM that isn't One UI, it burns that fuse, and it's now permanently marked as has run custom OS.
Yeah.
What that means is if realistically it's mostly Samsung apps that take advantage of this. Yeah. Things like the secure folder. Things that needs to know the hardware they're running on. But theoretically, banking apps could also look at that and go, listen, right now you're claiming you're running One UI, and hell, it might even be running One UI, but we don't know that it hasn't been tweaked, and that you're not like doing something at a hardware level in the back end.
Exactly. And all this really tells me is that Samsung, two things I get from this, with this much earlier potential release of, One UI 5 based on Android 13 much earlier in July, is given time to perfect it. Now, we're Samsung fans, right? But we do call out certain things that could have been done better because we want Samsung to stay on top and really present themselves best. That I wouldn't say it was rushed, One UI 4. It wasn't rushed. I mean, 2 months of beta testing is a good enough, and how they've pushed it across so many devices on a staggered calendar release and they're sticking to it's great. But I think having it this early, potentially, really should give them time to perfect even more. More feedback from Samsung community members, picking up on certain optimizations, certain building blocks. It should be based on Android 12 anyway, because I just feel like Android 12 was already a major update based on, presentation and visuals from color palette to security and privacy control in terms of, what you can see visually, what you can control in terms of location, mic and camera access, accessibility, widgets being different, and all other core Android, core Samsung apps like, Samsung Health, having more control and different options. Those things are there. But I just think the further optimization and tweaks, they will have more time so that come the final quarter of the year, when we should be getting devices like the S22 FE, if it doesn't get delayed like the S21 FE did, which is another sore point, but I won't tangent too much. I just think Samsung want to give themselves, if this is true, which, optimistic, I think that will give them enough time to really dial it in and have an even more stable and more streamlined OTA final update to the latest devices when the Fold 4 and the Flip 4 come out. S22 series being the definitive right now, from the Ultra Plus to S22, and even the Tab series, right? If this is true, and again, we have links in the description, audio listeners and video listeners alike, for all the potential devices that will be eligible for One UI 5, the public beta release. This is a good look.
Yeah, and I think Samsung does need that time because unlike, other companies, they have so many devices. And
ridiculous amount.
Even just looking at the S22 range, most people go, that's 3 phones, right?
Yeah.
The S22, the Plus, and the Ultra. But realistically, it's 6 because there's the Snapdragon variant that goes to most of the world, and then there's the Exynos variant that comes to the UK and Europe. Yeah, and so it's actually 6 devices, and that's just from one launch. Yeah, you have to support 4 years worth of devices. Yeah. And then if it's a phone, you're basically doubling however many devices you've released because there's a Snapdragon and an Exynos version. Yeah. But the Tab is fortunate in the sense that the Tabs have always had
one single SoC. Yeah,
they've all been set.
One SKU, one SoC. Yeah.
And I think we've seen that need for polish on the S22 Ultra.
Yeah.
Where the launch update that came out was fine, but the second update that came out wasn't. It
wasn't. Yeah.
It was not good. I had a Bluetooth audio sync issue.
Yeah. I remember you saying.
Which was really annoying because basically what would happen is once you've used Bluetooth headphones once, videos just are constantly desynced. Yes. Even if you're not using Bluetooth headphones, you would play a video and it starts playing and the video freezes for a second and then carries on, but the audio never froze. Yeah. So they're desynced. Yeah. Things like the camera could just lag at times.
Yeah.
it's the kind of thing where like they're little things where like they're not really that big a deal individually.
But in the grand scheme of things, you look at the price of the product,
exactly,
the newness of the product as well. You just feel like, these things should be tightened up.
Yeah, these are all things that they sort of all add up to make an experience.
Yeah.
And B, if you're spending over £1,000 on a phone, you don't expect to be unable to watch YouTube videos on it.
No, of course.
That's like the core fundamentals.
There's something about that £1,000 limit that changes your whole perception of this is what should not be happening. Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So it's good. It's good. And I mean, closing it off, like we said, take it with a grain of salt, take it with a pinch of salt, whichever measurement of salt that, feeds your palate really well or cleanses your palate really well. If this is true, and we want to be optimistic because Samsung have been on a roll of doing speedy monthly updates, like on point monthly updates. Like April update was out 2 days before April for most people. April 1st on the dot for most people. Launch date on the 25th for, the S22 Ultra had an update ready. They are on the board, they're on the money. And if they nail this right, this could genuinely usher in a new mindset to how you think of Samsung being the complete definitive version of what Android should be. The complete definitive, not just based on they have a lot of models, great hardware, right? But now also with the responsibility of we are going to take care of all that investment you've put in while we are ushering new form factors like foldables and developing and also bringing in different tech. So watch out for the space, people. SamMobile.com, SamMobile TV, SamMobile Podcast. We are your home for all things related to One UI. And the minute we see that public beta release out, we'll be on it straight away. So yeah, watch out for it. And we are going to take a short break, another interlude, and pretty much finalize on episode 3 and pretty much talk about what else are we, the guest seat question that I like to ask the guest of, what else are they looking forward to when it comes to Samsung really closing out 2022, the rest of the year, and ushering the new year and what that would look like. So definitely sit back, relax. We'll be back right after this short break. And we are back. And as I always say, I hope you didn't go too far because we didn't. Spend a bit of time, recharged, re-energized. And we are pretty much on the final leg of the SamMobile Podcast, episode 3. Really appreciate George coming in again as a guest. And it makes the in-person conversations always better. And kind of like a hot seat question that I've kind of semi-developed on the fly for my guest. To basically ask, Samsung have had I think Samsung have had their busiest Q1 start in as many years as I remember. If you go back to S21 FE from the 3rd of January, all the Samsung display stuff, with QD display and QD-OLED, Smart Monitor M8, the new gaming monitors from their Odyssey range, which is still yet to come out with 4K 240 Hz, come back, S22 series, Tab S8 series. Then you've got the Book 2 Pro, Book 2 360. And then the Galaxy A range, A53, A33, A73, A13, it's a lot.
Yeah, there's a lot of letters and numbers.
There's a lot of stuff happening from January to April that we're in right now, which is good. It just shows that they're hot on the heels and they're really pressing in with all the software stuff that we talked about as well. But it sets the precedent that there's still a lot of 2022 left, right? 2 whole quarters were in the beginning of the second quarter, quarter 3, quarter 4 left. What are you looking forward to from Samsung? Just, whether it's Samsung display, Samsung electronics, just all things related to Samsung. What are you looking forward to for them to really close up 2022 and just what that would look like starting and spilling into 2023?
Really weirdly for me, this is going to go hard into like the phone segment, I guess.
Good.
I guess.
Love that.
Just gonna whip this out real quick. I'm holding, I guess for listeners, I'm holding a Z Fold 3 right now. The thing for me is, I think the Fold specifically,
Yep.
as a line of phones is just an absolute game changer. And
Yep.
when I got to use the initial Fold, the Fold 1, my sort of feedback for it was, listen, this is a great phone. It's a great first step.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't pay the money you're asking for it.
Oh, hell no.
However, if someone gave it to me as a gift and was like, George, here you go, use this. No doubt.
No doubt.
No doubt.
Yep.
The Fold 3 is I think was the first time where you could really look at it and go, actually, this is a proper...
Especially with the IPX8 rate. Like
the
water resistance.
the IPX8 water resistance, the cameras are sort of in this weird space where, because they kind of had to fit into that smaller space.
Yeah, the slimmer form factor.
They're almost sort of their flagship quality, but they're a generation behind.
Yeah.
So I would expect the Z Fold 4 to have like roughly the same flagship quality as like the S21s.
Yeah.
And we're getting to a point where this is a very much matured device.
I know, quicker than I expected, I'll be very honest with you.
And not only that, but I think something that people haven't considered is the impact that Android 12L is going to have on these phones.
Yes, absolutely. Oh my goodness, I forgot about Android 12L.
Because even if One UI 5 is based on Android 13, the intention is going forward is that Android 12L is really an Android 12.5.
Yeah.
And everything in L gets rolled into Android 13
yes.
when that comes out.
Yes.
And I think that takes, and this is one of those things where it's kind of a domino effect, where I think Android 12L takes the foldable from like pretty good but a bit janky sometimes to very good.
That's what we need.
And at the same time it takes Samsung DeX, software that, let's be honest, you've probably forgotten about.
Yep.
It takes DeX from also very good but a bit jank sometimes to like a genuine potential desktop replacement.
Yeah.
Because if they can handle the window usage properly,
the scaling,
that can be really useful. I use DeX surprisingly frequently because sometimes I just need to throw something up on a TV. And DeX now works wirelessly, which is great. Like,
wireless DeX is impressive.
The evolution of DeX is crazy.
From when it started back in S8 series, when it needed a dock with the charger.
It needed the dock with the charger because the power demands meant that
and the chipsets weren't as efficient in terms of the fabrication process at the time.
And it also produced so much heat that those stands are actually actively cooling stands.
That's it.
And we've now gotten to a point where it can do it wirelessly without breaking a sweat.
That was all the way back in 2017.
Yeah.
Wow.
And the thing that saddens me a little bit is actually that DeX has gone slightly backwards with the last couple of versions, because you previously could get Linux on DeX.
I heard about that.
And that for me was just one of those things where like it really itched my nerd. And it's the reason I'm like buying a Playdate, and which like is not because I need the device. It's that like something about it just really scratches that nerd itch.
I get you.
Being able to theoretically run Steam on my phone via DeX, like obviously practically speaking, I was never going to use it, but it's just like a cool tech. There's a part of me that needs that.
It's showcasing, it's tapping into the untapped potential and taking it from potential to, well, in science they say the opposite to potential is kinetic. So actually usable power, right?
Yeah, and if we're getting to this point where we kind of discussed earlier where realistically people buy a phone and 90% of their usage is to scroll through Facebook, that's because the smaller screen means that you can't really edit video. Imagine if I could hook up my S22 Ultra to a screen and then load up Adobe Rush or Video Leap or whatever and edit properly. That would be ridiculous. And it would be great. But you can't right now because it's just not consistent.
It's not consistent, but it does show that it's so good you touch on Android 12L because it just slipped in my mind. And I want to emphasize is that it seems like Team Fold are winning because you're the second guest that's on foldables that's just really, really, really driving it home. So shout out to Team Fold. I hope I can get a Team Flip member in here. So we do have a member of the team that we'll get in here that is Team Flip all the way through and through, which definitely is going to be a great discussion. But so far, Team Fold is winning. And you see, I've made this funny joke, right? That I'm not even going to behave like I'm not in a privileged position. I'm in a privileged position in general to have access to pretty much all the latest flagships, getting to test them, and obviously testing them so viewers and audience know what works and what doesn't work for them.
Yeah.
Right? And that's a great place to be. So I'm the very, very odd exception when I state this going forward, right? So please don't come after me. I'm begging you. But I'm saying that I do agree with how much of a game changer the Fold is in general as a form factor. My first Fold was the Fold 2.
Yeah.
And it's such a game changer in terms of the usability and the productivity and efficiency it gives in terms of day-to-day, the hybrid nature, that I just want to use that alone. Sometimes I'm like, I just don't want to test any of these phones. I just want to put my SIM in a Fold and enjoy a Fold for what it is, and it's just there based on if what we are expecting to see from the Generation 4 with the following the same footsteps as the S22 Ultra, having an S Pen built in, not just supported on the screen like what we saw on the S21 Ultra, that's just going to be a step closer to productivity. Having an S Pen on the outer cover display for even more seamless continuity when it comes to screen off memos, to then becoming a full memo, to insight, so many things. Like, I'm just looking forward to that. August couldn't come any sooner. I'm with you in terms of what the development of the Fold is going to be to really close out the rest of the year. Back to Android 12, back to what, Android 12L, would roll into Android 13, the hardware functionalities and stuff. So that's a good one.
Because I think if we're completely honest, the Fold 3, from a hardware point of view, aside from like sticking a bit of bigger battery in it, like it is more or less a complete device.
Yeah.
And it is almost entirely the software that kind of limits it at this point.
Oh yeah.
And so having those features rolled into it just makes it so much easier to buy and so much easier to recommend. And I know I'm Team Fold. However, what I will say in defense of Team Flip,
okay, bring it home,
is I can completely see Team Flip's point of view.
Oh yeah,
I get it completely.
I get it.
It's not for me. Like, the reason I own the S22 Ultra is because I just like having the most ridiculous,
absolutely.
And that's not what the Flip is, and that's fine. Like, the Flip is a phone but smaller, effectively. And that's just not what I'm going for. I have a friend who owns a Z Flip and absolutely loves it.
Yeah.
And I would argue that the first Z Flip was actually a more complete phone than the first Z Fold.
Yeah. Yeah, it was. Actually, yeah, it was. Especially the first Flip, and then what I like to call Flip 1.5, i.e. the 5G model as well, definitely felt more complete, especially with the Flex hinge. I think the Flex hinge, and that's something you didn't get on the first Fold. The hinge just wasn't up to scratch in that sense. The Flex hinge was a game changer in terms of making it more of a standalone, multi-purpose form factor usability kind of product, for video calls, watching movies, taking pictures and stuff. It's definitely true. And I would personally say that with those things in mind, the foldables in general, especially with what they did with the Flip, where they made the price on par with the S21 series, definitely set the pace for just that accessibility, But I'm looking forward to Fold 4. I'm with you.
And Samsung, if you're watching this, give us great trade-in deals, is all I'm saying. I want a good trade-in.
But it's I trust them to. I trust them to, and there's a consistency. Your guest number 2, episode 3, that has picked foldables to be what really helps, or what you're looking forward to close off the rest of 2022 with Samsung. And I'm with you on that. We don't know if this next guest is going to break the mold when it comes to that question, but we will see. But George is on Team Fold and pretty much looking forward to seeing what the 4th generation has to offer for the rest of the year from Samsung, amongst other things as well. But yes, that is pretty much it for episode 3 of the Sam Mobile Podcast. And another big thank you to George for coming in as our second in-person guest, making it not just more informative, but just more fun. Like,
thank you for having
fun
me.
is underrated nowadays. Everything's too serious. Like, we've come to work and do what we need to do, but it's like, it's more fun being in person. And we hope you, as our audio listeners on the podcast platforms, as well as our video listeners as well and watchers, that you do appreciate this. Definitely give us a like, subscribe, and turn on notifications across all the platforms so you don't miss all the new episodes of the SamMobile Podcast. We're going to definitely try and keep it weekly for you as per usual. As we always say, stay safe during this time, and we will catch you in the next one. Peace.